Good afternoon. So that's me. This is a lot less intimidating when there's less people in here than there was a while ago. So there's a lot of slides in this one, but a lot of it is just flicking through. So this is what the kind of breakdown of it's going to be. So a little bit of introduction. The campaigns we've run in the beginning and the campaigns and where we are now and where to next. So that's the UCC blurb and a lovely little video footage of University College Cork. And the thing at the start of it there, we're an award-winning institution, and when they say that, they're not joking. So the first thing we won, we were the first university to get the Antashka Green Flag back in 2010, and since then it has mushroomed. I'm not putting this up here to boast, but it's just to show the kind of environment we work in, that university management have been at this for a long time, and they do actually take this quite seriously. What's most interesting about the university's green sustainability strategy is that it was originally student-led. It came from the students at the very beginning, and it's been driven by them since then, and it was kind of then became part of the whole institutional outlook. So that was the first UCC sustainability strategy was in 2016, and that's the kind of framework that we were working under. And that's the same year that the library actually got involved in the whole sustainability journey. So that's our building. It's we were originally housed in the Quadrangle Reed building a long time ago, back in the 1800s when the library was founded. In 1983, the Boole building opened, which is now our legacy building to a certain extent. And then in 2007, we got a large extension. And we've always been service-centred. And we are also award-winning. Not quite as dramatic as UCC's, but we are still award-winning. So where our journey began was in 2016. And we were a little bit late to the party in terms of UCC. So Pat Meehan was appointed as the Energy and Utilities Manager, and he approached the library with an idea. And the reason he approached it is because buildings and estates in the university had a very different view of the library than librarians had. We looked at it as the services we provided, the collections we had, whereas he looked at it as a very large building in the middle of campus that accounted for 10% of the energy cost, used a vast amount of water, had very long opening hours, had a huge footfall, and that it was very much a piece of the infrastructure within the campus. So he had the idea of he'll approach the library and see if he could institute change there and then use that as a kind of a stalking horse for all the other departments where he was facing resistance to try and get change to happen in terms of energy consumption. So he approached us and we formed a committee called the Love Our Library Committee originally, and that was the original committee members, and I'm one of them. And he approached us with a thing called the Save or Save scheme. It's really a polluter pays scheme, but he didn't like the term polluter pays because he thought it was negative connotations. So it was Save or Save. So the way it worked is we were benchmarked our energy usage. We did a lot of measurement. We did a lot of data collection on how much waste we were using, how much water we were using, and our energy consumption. And then benchmarked us against that, and anything we managed to save was reinvested back into green initiatives within the library. It's a very good system, but you'll see there's a few drawbacks in it. The library got stuff out of it. We got kudos across campus and wider afield. We get to keep any monetary savings we make and reinvest them back in. And we got to work closely with buildings and estates and actually improving the building. A relationship that probably wasn't as close previous to this. I think Alan and Pat will be talking tomorrow, and you'll see that it wasn't always amicable, and there are still issues. The Estates Office then got to engage with the building. They got to look at it in real time. They got to use it as an example, and they also received credit across campus. So the first focus, because Pat is the energy manager, his focus was obviously on energy. So we tried to introduce energy saving measures. And one of the first things we did was we actually fitted an air curtain at the door because we have a north-facing door. In Ireland, probably not the wisest decision ever. And that was to help to try and cut out the heating costs from air coming in. He rebalanced the ventilation and the heating system, something that had never been done in the building. So some rooms were freezing cold, some were really warm. He fitted new valves, he fitted smart systems. And then we did simple things like turning off lights during the summertime when we don't particularly need them, fitting, removing or changing how things were wired up so that we could isolate certain sections of the building because they were all on or all off at one stage. Putting in pure sensors, so lights come on automatically when people walk into the room and go off. LEDs, replacing all the lights when necessary. When they wear out or are blown, they get replaced with LED bulbs. And then using it as a kind of a test bed for improvements, whether it's monitoring systems, or occupancy counters, CO2 monitors, are all integrated into the building. Not as fast as we'd like sometimes, but it does happen. So it very quickly became evident to the Sustainability Committee that energy was too narrow a focus. We had much bigger issues than just energy. It was a big one, but it wasn't our only one. And one of the big issues we had was waste. Our recycling levels were appalling. So we were starting at a really low base. So waste was something that we decided we had to tackle. There was the energy usage. And water was also something that we were using an awful lot of it, unnecessarily. It was things like automatic flushes in toilets, taps that were left on, leaks. It was an endless list. And it was just that it was never looked at. Nobody was ever measuring it, so nobody really paid any attention. And Pat does say if you can't measure it, you can't fix it. So measuring things and knowing what we're using now and what we want to get it down to are very important things. And then the other thing we wanted to change was the culture, because the students are the ones using our building predominantly, and without changing their attitudes and our own attitudes, then nothing was ever going to change. So introducing cultural change, which is probably the most difficult bit, and that was very much about educating library users, or pestering them is another way of putting it sometimes. So we did a library sustainability strategy, a strategy and an action plan back in 2016 or 2017, where we could actually focus on where we wanted to go. It ran up to 2020, and with COVID and everything, it's kind of run out. But it did help us focus our minds on what we wanted to achieve and how we were going to get there. And a big part of that was that it was a social contract between the library and our users. So the people who are bringing waste into the building are the students. It's their responsibility to manage their waste. It's not ours. So we'll provide you with a nice environment. We'll do our best to supply you with a good learning environment, good spaces, a clean environment, but it's also your responsibility within the library to maintain it as well. That it's not just it's your library now, you're using it, but it's also the next generation's library and the next generation's library. And we can't afford to be replacing carpets every few years because you're spilling coffee all over it. That you actually have a responsibility to help maintain this building as well, not just for you, but for all the future students that are coming into it. So our savings reinvested, there's just some examples of the things we did. Door curtain, water fountains, green wall, and when our van was due to be replaced, because it was an old diesel van, we replaced it with an electric van as well. So our waste problem was quite a colossal one. We had 167 bins across the building. Each of those had plastic bags in them. They were all contaminated because there was no recycling. We had a huge issue with single-use everything, plastics, coffee cups, you name it. And then the other side of that was the office waste we were generating. So our solution was to get rid of all the bins, kind of follow the Japanese model, just get rid of them all. We took them all out of the offices, and while there was a little bit of pushback, most staff were pretty much on board with it. But we put 2 recycling stations on the ground floor because everyone had to come in and out of the building through the ground floor anyway. So we put 2 recycling stations there and 1 in the quad reading room, which we use for 24 hours. And we encouraged students to bring all their waste with them. You took it in, you bring it out. And our recycling rate increased 700% just by doing that. We completely banned disposable cups. We just said no. The solution was you can bring in coffee in a travel mug, but you can't bring in a disposable cup. And we were very strict about it. You know, we do pull people up on it and say, you just can't have that in here, you'll have to take it outside. There was a big poster outside, which did the rounds on Twitter various times. Water stations then, to encourage people to bring their own bottles. It's something which has now become kind of almost common practice. It's, you know, at the time there was plastic water bottles everywhere, and now a lot less. But we'll get onto that in a minute. And, you know, overall it was pretty successful. So there's our recycling stations. And all of this was linked to a campaign. You know, we didn't just introduce this and leave it at that. The education part of it and the driving home the message was just as important, if not more important. So we constantly have our digital signage putting up new signs, recycling them around so that, you know, they aren't the same things all the time. You know, reusable cups, keep it clean. I actually had to contact that guy, the little rubbish fairy. He was a guy from Pittsburgh, and asked him could I use his picture. So I owe him a pint next if he's ever in Ireland. So he's our rubbish fairy, and there is no such thing as a rubbish fairy. No one's going to collect your waste and make it magically disappear for you. And it was just constantly having a campaign to try and instill the culture into the student body and the people using the library that, you know, this is forever. We have to keep this going all the time. So the water saving measures then we did were taps, reduced flow taps, stopping the urinals flushing every 10 minutes, that kind of thing. Automatic water stations. We always had water stations, but nobody knew where they were. So we just signposted them better. We put water droplets along the wall, so if you're looking for water, you just follow the water droplets. Outdoor water station, the Bring Your Own Bottle campaign, and metering. So buildings and estates now monitor our water usage, and they can spot if there's leaks or if a tap is running all the time, and they just get fixed a lot quicker, so there's a lot less water waste. Okay, so those are just some of the examples of the water ones, and you can see the dots there on the walls where people can follow the water. So then we did try other campaigns, some more successful than others. The Bin the Butt was from people smoking directly outside the library, where it was coming into the reading room, so if you were sitting inside studying, you could smell it coming in. Successful-ish. The green wall was added and more greenery, and that certainly has improved the environment a bit. We tried the gumball, which was for recycling chewing gum. It ended up getting filled up with cigarette butts, so we had to take it out because it was disgusting. Transport, we replaced the van, and now we have electric bicycles as well that library staff can use either to try out electric bicycles to see if they want to buy one under the Cycle to Work scheme, or use it for going across the campus and various parts of the city. Green conferencing is another thing we introduced, where we put a dishwasher into a room for the caterers coming in and all their cups and cutlery and everything else, so they don't actually have to bring it into the library, it's already there. They can wash it in situ and then just store it away again for the next time. So it means that we don't have the disposable cups and the single-use plastics and everything coming in all the time, and the e-bikes. So that's just an example, and that's the gumdrop that got really disgusting. So as I said, we reinforce the message all the time using digital signage, and this is the one that's outside, and I actually was outside a couple of days ago, and some tourists were up on campus and they were taking a photograph of this. So it's still a really popular one. It's one we're probably going to keep for quite a while, but you'll see that it's kind of been moved on. So it's had quite a bit of an impact, not all of it sustainable, or sustained, I should say. So reduced energy use, reduced waste generation, improved water conservation, rolling investment, and I would say cultural change as well. There's absolutely an improved internal environment due to having nicer plants and greenery within the building, which we didn't have. Better behaviours, we got recognition, we've been copied. It's been good for our community, and it's a conversation, and we've also kind of become a go-to test bed. So that's the impact in numbers. A lot of kilowatt hours saved, 65,000 reinvested, 1 million litres of water conserved, and that's just from the taps and all of that that's done. Well over 250,000 bags saved from all the rubbish bins we had. And I just did a count there before this conference on how many times the automatic refilling stations have been used, and we are now over 1 million times. So that counts half a litre, so that's 500,000 litres of water in reusable bottles. Each one of those would have been a plastic bottle before this. So quite dramatic. And since it was introduced in the library, Pat could then use that example as to go to other buildings and go, look, if the heaviest footfall building in the campus, 1.2 to 1.5 million people every year, if they can introduce it, you have no excuse. So since then, it's been introduced, various measures have been introduced into other buildings. So you've got the Environmental Research Institute, the North Mall campus, the Quad, the Glucksman, and the pharmacy building. All have introduced similar schemes and have been using it to introduce sustainable initiatives. And then COVID happened, and we lost ground. There's no two ways about it. First of all, we all probably saw a huge increase in waste, whether it was the sanitizing wipes or anything else. It highlighted major infrastructure problems with the building, increased heating costs because of increased ventilation. But it did give us a slightly smarter building, so CO2 monitors, temperature sensors, and occupancy counters were added to all the different rooms, which did help. And that's just an example of the kind of dashboard that measures the CO2. Probably the most dramatic change that's happened recently is that UCC has gone plastic free. So we no longer have really a problem with plastic to deal with, because it's just not sold on campus anymore, and the same with disposable cups. Not really an issue anymore, but it's created new issues. A monster problem, cans. Monstrous amounts of monster cans everywhere. Another problem that we didn't foresee coming is disposable vapes, as Micheál Martin called it, the tobacco company's revenge. They're everywhere, and they are now an issue, so we had to put in a bin specifically for vapes, and now we'll have to try and do a campaign to try and encourage students to recycle the vapes, because each one of those has a 500 milliamp lithium-ion battery in it, and an aluminium casing on the ELF bars that's all going into landfill. Or has been thrown on the street. So they are a huge issue. And then, of course, because we didn't have plastic bottles anymore, we had to rebrand our bins, because now we had more cans to deal with. So it's a constant struggle. It's a constant evolving situation, and as one problem is dealt with, new problems arise. So what does the future hold? So we have to do a new sustainability strategy, because our old one is out of date, so that's a job for this summer for the Sustainability Committee. We have to refocus our messaging. We'll maintain a lot of the messaging that we had, but we're going to refocus it in terms of digital carbon footprint, for instance. Every email we send, every photograph we save, every piece of data has an environmental cost. And there's a slight irony to the fact that we moved to a kind of a digital model and paperless offices, and now we're going, yeah, but that also has a cost, and we have to tackle that cost. It's not just cost neutral. We have to try and regain the ground that we lost during COVID, but that will require huge capital investment in the building, whether it's the HVAC system or how we heat the system, which ties in with the decarbonisation of our energy load, which is things like solar panels. Again, massive capital investment, which to a large extent is outside of the library's hands. We can certainly play a part in it, but it's something that will have to come either from the government in terms of funding, or from the university itself in terms of money and investment. And again, the last thing there, I've mentioned the digital footprint, but consumption awareness is another issue that we'll try and highlight with our students. They are the kind of main consumers of fast fashion in the age group that they are. So that can be a focus as well that we're going to try and push a little bit more, that they have to be just aware of their consumption. So our kind of theme for our new project going forward, the last one was Love Our Library, and this one is Leave Smaller Footprints, is what we're going to emphasize on. That we all try and reduce our footprint as much as possible in every way that we can. And that is it, and I'm right on time, so.